Welcome to the Putback on SNY.TV. We'll be talking Knicks and the NBA for the next 20 minutes, half hour or so. Got great guests today. Got Joel Abelson, former coach in the G League, spent a long time with the Westchester Knicks, working in the front office, did some pro scouting for the Knicks. We got Edgar Burgos, long time, 2 decades plus, player support staff for the Knicks in many different roles, spent a lot of time around the team. So these guys have a deep knowledge of the team and the NBA in general. And with the Knicks right now, as you know, 5 straight wins, coming off of a big overtime win in Chicago last night. Jalen Brunson questionable going into that game, ends up playing and giving the Knicks 39 minutes, 30 points and 7 assists in those 39 minutes. Just a big time performance. He had said afterward that it was important for him to play to kind of set the tone for the group in terms of his willingness to kind of lay it out there when he wasn't 100%. He certainly did that. 5th win in a row for this Knicks team, and 5-0 since Tom Thibodeau makes that lineup adjustment with Miles McBride in, Cam Reddish, Derrick Rose out. And if you go back to 11 games ago when Quentin Grimes was back in the starting lineup, Mitchell Robinson was back on the court. Knicks are 7-4 in that span. The defensive numbers in general are really strong. But in that 11-game span and this 5-game winning streak, defense has been really good. Quentin Grimes, I think, playing a big role there. Healthy Mitchell Robinson, Miles McBride. A lot of things going well right now for this Knicks team as we unofficially enter the trade season in the NBA day today, where free agents, guys who signed in the offseason, most of them are eligible to be traded. So we're going to start with Joel here. When you were with us a few weeks back, everything was in disarray. It didn't go smoothly in the aftermath of your appearance, but here the Knicks are now, winning 5 straight, couple games above 500, seem to have righted the ship. What's your impression of what's going right here and why?
Well, I think you touched on a lot of it. First of all, it's a long season, 82 games, and they added a big piece in the offseason, and he's been a major component in their success as of late. Last night, and he's improving. What you're seeing, him take over Brunson. I'm talking about take over the point guard roles, the full-time role, which is different than what he did in Dallas. And he's coming into his own, really. I mean, he's controlling the pace of the game. He gets to his spots. He gets his guys involved. And down the stretch of the game last night, and you've seen it time and time again now, he just makes winning plays at the end of games. And, in the NBA regular season, especially in, what I guess we're calling the dog days here, it's the teams that play the hardest, that play the most together, and who make plays down the stretch are typically going to win more games than they're going to lose. We're getting to the point in the season also where, you look above the Knicks are 6th right now in the standings in the Eastern Conference, and you look maybe Miami, maybe Atlanta, maybe Toronto below them. But they're knocking on the door of the playoff seeding, and we haven't got to the portion of the season where there's going to be 10 teams who are actively trying to lose games. So the Knicks have put themselves in a position to continue to improve and really ascend. They can make some moves around the edges going forward here. To your point about trade season upon us, but they're in a good spot.
Edgar, for you, Julius Randle, obviously coming off a bad year last year in New York, all NBA season the year prior to that. He's been really good for them over the past few games. What have your impressions been of Randle in general, just this season and particularly more recently?
Oh, he wants it. I mean, Julius, he's showing that. I think him having Jalen there, Jalen is pushing him to be a better player. I mean, he's passing the ball faster than he has in the last couple of years. He knows the burden is not on him to take the last shot. I feel like he's more comfortable from conversations I've had. Jalen is is everyone on that team is looking at Jalen and it's helping Julius play freely, and that's why Julius, I think, is playing like he was 2 years ago.
And Joel, you look at the head coach and the moves that he's made. He gets scrutinized night in and night out. That's just the nature, of the job. But for him, I think his back was against the wall when he made this most recent rotation change, putting in Miles McBride, removing Derrick Rose, removing Cam Reddish. I think he knew he had to win games, and the result has been exactly what he wanted, what Leon Rose wanted, and I think what owner James Dolan wanted. But how significant of a move was that to make for Thibodeau, given the point of the season and given Derrick Rose, who he benched, who he's had such a strong relationship with? What are the dynamics at play there when you're making that decision?
Well, you never know what the garden is like. Whoever knows what's happening. It's a palace of intrigue. But my guess, and I'm not there and I don't know, my guess is, this was an un-Tibbs-like move. He's loyal to his guys. He loves veteran players. So my guess is he's not the only one in the building who felt like they had to start winning and winning now. Yeah. So organizationally, from top to bottom, I think there were probably some discussions between him, Leon, Wes, Gertz, and all the guys in the top of the front office. I don't have any idea if I'm right, but that's what it seems like. Playing the younger guys, giving a little oomph to just like the chemistry and the aura around the team, I think is really important. The question going forward is it sustainable? And that's yet to be determined. We'll have to see.
Edgar, you've seen how players kind of getting put into the rotation, getting taken out of the rotation. You've seen that behind the scenes. A lot of fans don't see it. Fans just see the games, right? And fans see decisions made on the floor. How can that impact a team, how positively, negatively, kind of behind the scenes when coaches kind of shake things up?
A lot. I mean, I've seen it, and you see how players. It depends on who the player is. Obviously, if it's a young guy, obviously with Cam, I'm sure Cam is definitely, bothered, and there's a lot of guys who are talking to him. But winning, they're winning, so he really can't say anything. So he can't really mess up the locker room because they're winning.
Right.
I am sure, he wants to get out of there. Like Cam definitely wants to get out of there. He's saying the right things right now in front of the media, but he wants to get out of there. I'm sure Jericho, he wants to play more. He probably is thinking about when they're young, they want to make that money. That's one thing that they talk about in that locker room, that they want to make. They want to get that next check. So, but winning solves everything.
Right, and you can't you can't fault Thibodeau right now because of the record. And interestingly enough, I think you go back to before this winning streak, I think a lot was on the table in terms of trades, because if the Knicks were several games under, they were floundering, right? I think they would have pursued, at least had conversations about significant moves to try to get this thing pointed in the other direction for everything that we talked about earlier, Joel. And I do think owner James Dolan was at the point where, hey, he wanted to see results. He wanted to see tangible results. He didn't want to see games like the Dallas loss where they get crushed in the third quarter and they're not competitive. He don't want to see many more games like the Oklahoma City game where they give up 145 points in regulation. He wanted to see the team compete. He wanted to see something tangible. And I think he's seen that over the last 5 games. So I think if the Knicks stay here, right, they stay around 500, couple games over, I would be surprised if they went and pursued a huge trade ahead of the deadline. I think what you'll see is they'll be involved in more minor moves, more roster, clearing up roster spots, clearing up rotation spots, whether it's a Derrick Rose, it's a Cam Reddish, it's an Evan Fournier. But also, I don't think they're in position really right now to dump a contract like Evan Fournier's, because that would mean you have to attach a young player, attach a draft asset. The teams in touch with them say that there's very little appetite on their end to do something like that with Fournier, because you already did that with the previous contracts that you signed. 2 off seasons ago. So how do you justify doing that again with Fournier? So the Knicks, at least according to people in touch with them, have been very hesitant to attach assets, specifically on Fournier. There's been talk with the Lakers. A lot of the Lakers talk that I had heard was a 3-team deal. Cam Reddish's name was brought up. Evan Fournier's name was brought up. So I would assume that those talks continue. But I don't think right now, at least, if the Knicks continue to win and to be around 500, a couple games over, I'd be surprised if they made a significant move right now at the deadline. And Joel, Cam Reddish, he's going to be a restricted free agent. What would you think his trade value is right now around the league?
It's a good question. He couldn't get any minutes at his previous stop, and now as he goes to the bench, the Knicks ascend. So at some point, he is going to have to prove that he can contribute to winning on a night-to-night basis. My guess is he is not somebody that teams are going to covet. He could end up being a throw-in in a deal. He might garner a second-round pick. I don't think he would get much more than that. I don't think a team's going to look at Cam Reddish and say, we got to have Cam Reddish, and here's a first-round pick, Leon. I don't see that. But the Knicks are in an interesting position, with the emergence of these young guys, and to your point about Fournier and Rose and Reddish, and even Jericho Sims, is Sims, the Sims-Hartenstein debate now is starting to look interesting too. Should he be playing more than Hartenstein, a guy that I really like, a guy that, the whole league covets? So, they're in an interesting position that way. If the young guys can continue to perform, then they have some pieces that potentially could be interesting to teams around the league. And, and Toppin's hurt too. I mean, depth is important. Toppin is hurt too. So they're in an interesting position. And if they can sustain it, especially, they'll have some nice options.
The Quickly part of this is intriguing to me too, because you look ahead, he's extension eligible this coming off season, as is Obi Toppin. The Knicks, they don't have cap space to speak of, and it would be a big financial commitment to extend both of those players. A lot of teams felt early in the season that Quickly not necessarily was on the table, but the Knicks were willing to listen, and they did. A lot of teams called, and I think Knicks had conversations on Quickly, but I think he's played such a significant role in the way the team has played recently. And how do you balance, that long-term potential issue with having to commit big money to both Toppin and Quickly when you've already committed big money to other players and the need to win games now? Do you say, or we'll revisit it closer to the draft? I'm just not sure, like making a trade of a player who's in a rotation when the team has had so much success lately. I'm not sure how the Knicks would weigh that. I do know that the Knicks were seeking draft compensation on Quickly in some of their previous talks with teams, but it'll be interesting to see where it goes from here. And Edgar, this Knicks team, has shown an ability to weather some losing streaks, weather some bad losses, weather outside noise around the team, and find a way to win in the aftermath of those bad losses or those, questions about their coach's job security, whatever it may be. But not a lot of Knicks teams have had that in the past, say 10 years. But you've seen teams that have had that resiliency. What does it take for a group? What's the difference between groups that kind of hang their head and let things go sideways and groups that kind of wade the waters when things are not going great and they find their way out of it?
You have certain guys. I like that's why I think Jalen Brunson is was such a great pickup because everywhere he's gone, he's always won. Villanova, obviously Dallas. So he brings a different type of tough mindset on what it takes to win. You look at Julius never really had that in his career. I mean, he had a good season 2 years ago. Last year, everyone was looking at him, but he was never that guy. You need tough-minded guys like, Jalen, and you give Jalen credit because look at who his dad was, Rick Brunson. He played for 97 Knicks, 96 Knicks, and that was the toughest team as they come. So he has that that pedigree. So you need that you need that type of leadership.
And Joel, for you, like when you were coaching, what kind of locker rooms? I would imagine you maybe experienced both, maybe you didn't. What were your teams like? Could they take a punch and persevere? Did they struggle with that? And just as a head coach, what's that dynamic like?
Yeah, I think in the minor leagues, there's 50 games in a season, so it's different than 82. But I think there are, let's call it 2 or 3 points in every season where your season can kind of turn. You know, are you going to show some resiliency? Can you make a lineup change or some sort of change to, get your team moving in the right direction, for lack of a better term? And then on the flip side is, you can kind of crumble from within. What the Knicks have done, what they've shown is they're capable of ascending, and it bodes well this early in the season when they're adding new pieces, they're fighting through injuries, and to your guys' earlier point, Julius Randle is playing a lot better, and that's really necessary for them to have sustained success. But winning cures all, and you guys both said that earlier. But the truth is, Cam Reddish is not pleased. He doesn't have license to say anything. Derrick Rose may be a little different because he's been around so long. Fournier also, but in their heart of hearts, they think they can contribute to winning. They think they should be playing over the guys that are now playing over them, and that's how they got to where they are. The question is specifically for Cam Reddish going forward is how are you going to respond to the second setback in your career? And, whether you get a second round pick, you end up extending him, you don't, whatever, et cetera, whatever happens, just him personally, he has to make a decision. He has to make a choice, and it's up to him how he responds. And it affects the whole team and the locker room. So,
yeah, there's so much at play that, we don't see, but it happens behind the scenes, and it's like there's a lot of moving parts for every NBA team. But Edgar, for you referenced Rick Brunson, and you referenced that 97, those teams in the late 90s, and I know that you're very fond of that 97 team that really seemed like it had a chance to do special things. And then, what happened? The thing that happened in Miami. They ended up losing that series after the fight. I mean, what was your recollection of just that moment after the fight and being in that locker room? And what do you remember?
I remember the togetherness, I remember, like, after the fight, obviously they were hyped. I remember, the locker room, like, they were like, yo, we're going to beat these guys, and they kept saying, like, we are the best team in this league. Like, I still say, like, if Patrick Ewing never got suspended, we would have won that title that season. The Bulls, I remember that season, we beat the Bulls 3 out of 4 games. We beat them in the last game of the regular season. That 97 team was by far the best team that I've ever been a part of. And then the second best team was the 2012 team. And the 2012 team could have went to the finals.
What was the locker room like in 2012, 13? You're talking about the Carmelo, Jason Kidd, Kirk Thomas, Marcus Camby, Mike Woodson, that group, won 54 games in the regular season. What was that locker room like?
They were tight. Jason Kidd in his 1 year there, he knew how to rally the guys. And I was like, this guy, he would talk to guys in a way where it was the first time I actually seen Melo. Melo was never really a talker. He just played. But like with Jason, I think gave him that extra, like, that push to be more of a leader of that team. And, Melo, and they follow Woody. They would listen to Woody compared to, like, Mike D'Antoni. D'Antoni was afraid to talk to people. So, D'Antoni was afraid to talk to people, and Mike Woodson will get in your face and just talk to you guys.
Man, it's that dynamic is so hard to replicate. But I do remember early on that year, regular season, Carmelo totally laid out, sacrificed his body for a loose ball. I think it was like in the first half of a game too. And we asked him about it afterward, and it just seemed like emblematic of the way he was locked in and kind of how the winning mentality of some of those vets kind of fed into that group, and they had a good season. Joel, I got one for you because of your front office experience with Westchester, obviously doing some scouting. If you were handling the Evan Fournier, Cam Reddish, Derrick Rose situations, and you had, 6 weeks, whatever, 7 weeks to figure it out, what would be the best outcome for you realistically if you're kind of looking at this thing from the top down and you have a lot of options on the table?
Yeah, I mean, the key is to let your peers around the league know kind of what you're thinking, without, giving too much, but saying, we would discuss moving Fournier, we would discuss moving Reddish, we would discuss moving Rose, we would even discuss moving Grimes for the right and quickly and Toppin for the right guy. So whatever those conversations are, you're having them with your peers around the league. And if it's not Leon or Wes, it's Gerson or whoever, or Scott, having those conversations, maybe not the top guys, but the second or third guys in command, and you're just keeping in touch on things. And a lot of stuff happens as we all know, on a daily, weekly basis. I'm in no rush 6 weeks out of the trade deadline to do anything. And depth is great to have. Depth's important to have, and let's see how it plays out. Everybody's very reactive in the NBA and sports, especially like in the media. They've won some games, and that's nice. They could easily lose some games, and then we'd be back kind of to the drawing board. Oh, we got to play Derek more. So let's see how it plays out. You're just not in any rush here. It's good that the whole league is basically available to be traded in, when is it, today? But you have until the first week of February, and there's a lot that's going to happen between now and then.
Plenty of games to be played, plenty of discussions for the Knicks to have with their counterparts around the league about potential trades, and we'll be sure to be on top of it all. That'll do it for us for this edition of the Putback. Big thanks to Joel Abelson, for Edgar Burgos for joining us. We will be back next Thursday, 1 p.m., special holiday edition of the Putback. Remember, Knicks playing Christmas Day against the Sixers. We'll get you set for that.